Welcome to this episode of the Million Dollar Mastermind. I'm Larry Weidel, and before we get started, if you want to know exactly how to win again and again, go to weidelonwinning.com/webinar now to watch something I've put together for you. Now let's get going into this episode of Million Dollar Mastermind. I am talking this afternoon with Jeanne David, CEO and founder of Outer Aisle Gourmet. They are I'll let her tell you about them, but it's a big, fast growing company. In fact, in 2020, they were fifth fastest growing company in California. They are on track for $50 million in revenue this year. And so welcome, Jeanne.
Thank you, Larry. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
How's the year going?
It's going very well. It's very interesting. I think none of us knew what COVID would do. I think we're all still kind of surprised the way COVID impacted businesses. It was nothing anyone could have foreseen. For us, what it did is last year we were in such a growth phase of opening new doors that what happened is we saw our pipeline, while grocery store buyers kind of shut down and focused on keeping toilet paper on the shelf. They were not focused on new items. That stymied our growth in the new doors our pipeline. So for us, what happened in 2021 very quickly and the end of 2020 is it seemed to be that grocers kind of shuffled to say, wait, we need new products. We realize it's the end of the year and we don't have anything coming in for next year. So we began seeing a ramp up in December, which is normally our very dormant time in the grocery industry. So January, February, March, our first quarter, we grew 379% year over last Q1. So that was quite an experience. We're a manufacturer. So for us, we're not a co-packer that can just make a phone call. We really have to shift and move quickly in our operations. So yeah, it was quite a crazy Q1. And then things, then what happened is we went through all of our back stock and inventory, and then we started having the same issues I'm watching my favorite brands have. Out of stocks, we go to order our favorite food and it's out of stock. So we had to kind of regulate our sales in order to build some back stock and get back to where we needed to be. And so it's been a very interesting year where we're putting in all the things we need to put in to keep up with demand. And it's been, exciting.
John, tell people what your product is. It's one that I use and I'm a big fan of, as we were talking about earlier.
Yeah, so we produce cauliflower sandwich thins and cauliflower pizza crust. And what we do is we use 63% fresh vegetables in our product. So if you're eating our sandwich thins, you're actually eating a serving of vegetables. And our pizza crust has 2 servings of vegetables. So if you're eating a sandwich on our sandwich thins, a turkey sandwich, let's say, you're actually eating turkey and 2 servings of vegetables, no bread at all. Unlike our competitors that are basically a gluten-free product, which has some gluten-free filler flours in there, right? To take the wheat out, which is great. They're better for you than the wheat. But what I like to say is our product is actually good for you. It's nutrient dense and has the fresh vegetables in it. And Larry and I were talking recording, just to say the difference I noticed and felt immediately is when you eat our product, you feel satiated because you're getting real food. You don't have, because you're getting some protein, you're getting some vegetables in it as well. Your body is nourished and you're satiated for 4 hours, as opposed to the empty carbs that come in and cause your blood sugar to spike and you're hungry again in 2 hours. So that's what we're here to really address, those big shifts in health out there, and yeah, revolutionize the bread industry.
Well, it's great when you can find a business to throw your energy behind where for a fact you are helping people and it gives you a mission
Yes.
for doing good. And, we want you to expand the outlets you're in and stores you're in so it can be easier for people to get this stuff because, health is a crisis in our country,
Yes.
and a lot of it comes from food. So
Yes, especially after COVID, we're finding our customers, everybody. I mean, our sales are through the roof. We really can't keep up with demand, and we do feel that it is post-COVID. People gain that extra 20 pounds or whatever it was during that time, and everybody is focused on health. And for us, when we launched the company, the diabetes epidemic was something we had learned about, and that when we started the company, it was projected that in 10 years, 50% of our country would be pre-diabetic or diabetic. And in fact, we got to 5 years, which was last year, and they changed it to 75% of our country because we had already hit the 50 back then of pre-diabetic or diabetic. And so really that comes from, we were the generation that brought in the low fat, high carb foods, right?
Right.
We were that low fat, we brought in all the, you could eat all the bread you wanted as long as it didn't have carbs in it. As long as it didn't have the fat in it. So it's that shift that has, people in their 50s and 60s really filled with diabetes and other inflammation-based diseases. So that's for us, the big win is really transforming health by, if all you do is take sugar and bread out of your diet, it will drastically transform your health.
You have been motivated. I think you identified early on that you wanted to be in the business of helping people. I show down here you were executive director of the Arthritis Foundation from 2006 to 2012, and then you spent a year as executive director of Hands for Others, which dealt with the world's water crisis. And then you went. How did you make that jump now to founding this business?
So I've always been kind of a health and fitness buff. I was a personal trainer early on. I actually brought a product to market when my sons were young, and that was a healthy version of cookie dough because it was something moms always did with their small children. And yet when I picked up a roll of Pillsbury cookie dough, it was just filled with so many chemicals. And I was like, wow, this is what moms think homemade cookie dough is. And so I came out with truly homemade cookie dough that was kind of, the movement was all natural. And so it was all natural, just, all real ingredients again, and resealable tubs, everything that Pillsbury wasn't doing. So I've kind of always had that interest. And so when I hit 50, I decided to really look at my life and say, what do I want to do? I really wanted to make an impact with the last 15 years of my career. And that's kind of the space I was in. My sons were out of college. We didn't necessarily depend upon my salary like we had while they were in college. And so we just decided, take the year, find what best suits your gifts and talents, and, take the time to do that. So it was that year, and we had made a big health shift in our own lives, and we're totally committed to this lifestyle. But yet we were bored with not having bread in our diet because it was that vehicle that we could do so much with. It made eating healthy very easy, and not so cumbersome. So the products were born while we were in that space. And
hey, listen, there's a lot of information online, but there aren't a lot of people who've actually done something. In my case, I've actually built a successful business that's accrued over $5 billion in assets under management and has done well even during trying times. Now, if you want to know exactly how I've done this, go to whiteelemwinning.com/webinar now. I've compressed a decade of learning into 5 short weeks just for those of you who want to give yourself an incredible advantage and are tired of waiting and watching others move up.
Talk about that taking a year, that decision to take a year.
Yeah, it was an uncomfortable year. I decided that my time at the Arthritis Foundation had gone. They were making some critical changes as far as mission and what they were doing, and it was just a little bit of a conflict for my values and what I wanted to do. And so, because they were moving away from programs in the community, and I really was committed to that, knew that our people wanted that. So it was, there was a shift. And so I felt like it was what I was brought in to do there, I had achieved, and that it was time to move on. And so I didn't have anything in mind. And I met with a guy who, kind of a coach, and he knows a lot of people in our town. So I was, meeting with him to say, what's out there. And in the past, I had always looked for jobs, right? You look for what's open and you apply to them. And I'd never had the luxury of saying, well, what do I want to do? And what is that? If I could do anything, what would it be? And that's the question he asked me. And I couldn't believe how paralyzing that was to me. He's like, if you could do anything, what would it be? And I was like, oh, I don't know. And he's like, well, we're not gonna continue on this conversation until you decide that. And I was so paralyzed by that conversation. So I spent the time really thinking about, what are my true gifts and talents I'd love to put into work and to use, so that I can feel that I'm bringing the best of who I am to this world as my gift to the world, as we all are created with unique gifts and talents, and how we bring them to the world is our gift to the world, but I believe that we're all so uniquely created. There's certain things that only we can do, and to be really using your gifts and talents to bring that. And people would call it passion or whatever. For me, it's really about where I excel and how kind of my brain and my ethos works. So, yeah.
And talk about that, going through that process. So you get asked that question, you're kind of stunned because, it's basically a wake-up question for you, Jeanne. And
yeah.
It's funny how we go through our lives and we don't ask ourselves these questions.
Right.
especially when you're in survival mode, and when you've got kids and you've got the, it's the tyranny of the urgent, related to personal finances. It's like, I do a lot of things if I didn't have bills to pay and people to be responsible for, and but the deal is these obligations usually are not lifetime. Usually you'll get a chance to catch your breath and to reevaluate. And just because you've been on a track forever doesn't mean you have to stay on it. And this is a great question when you're shifting from working just to survive to working to fulfill what you feel is your destiny, or where you can take maximum advantage of your gifts, which is usually related to things you are interested in. It comes from inside you, things you're curious about, you're interested in now. And so as you left that, or as your mind started to move forward to deal with that question, how to talk about that?
Well, what's interesting is I've always been very entrepreneurial. I mean, I'm a very early age. I had my friends. So that has always been something I'm I absolutely like kind of automatically my brain goes there. But what I had done for about 15 years is turned off that. I disciplined myself, said, you can no longer afford to be an entrepreneur. You've got to get a job and just, bring in. I went through a divorce and I was a single mom for 5 years. So that's kind of when that switch got turned off. And I made the mental assent to say, no, you've got to do what it takes to provide for yourself and your kids. And so I did that. And I had some great jobs. Again, I looked and I found a job. And so I was moving out of that mode, and not super consciously, but it ended up happening because my husband gave me a great gift and said, look, just take your time. We're good. You just take the year. And I was very squirmy in that year because I'm very much of a pioneer. I'm very much of a doer, very much of an achiever. So being out there thinking and trying to figure it out was uncomfortable. But I also knew that I wanted the last 15 years of my career and to make a difference, instead of taking a job just to take a job and fill a slot, and not that didn't have its purpose, because it absolutely had its purpose. But I was shifting into what really I want to leave a legacy. I want my last 15 years to really matter in the career. What am I uniquely gifted and talented with that I can bring and put into something? And I actually, when I came up with this idea, my son's like, he was in personal training at the time, and he's like, let's do it. Let's bring it to market. And I was like, no. I was doing the thing with my ears and going, la, 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 no. And for a week, I said that, within a day, I had the whole product line in my mind. And that's the way my mind worked. But I had turned that off intentionally because I needed to turn that off because of the discipline I needed to have to be practical and provide. And so, he would keep coming back every day, go, no, let's bring this to market. Come on. And so after about a week, I was like, okay, I'll think about it, And so that's kind of how it was over the next year. It was like, okay, I have one toe in the water. Will this even work? I mean, you have COGS, you have your cost of goods that, this was going to be fresh cauliflower. It's something that had never been done before. We couldn't even call it cauliflower sandwich thins or cauliflower pizza crust because cauliflower wasn't even a thing. It was an offensive thought. So we called it veggie sandwich thins and veggie pizza crust until the cauliflower caught on and we could switch over to that name. So it was very much a whole different concept. And would it work? Would it pencil out? And so we really spent the next year diving into that, the nutrition panel, the product qualities, the R&D, and would it work? And I had the year to kind of figure out would it work. So at the end of that year, we decided that it was worth it to take it to the next level. And so we proceeded into another year. And
that is exciting to hear, the natural progression, because this is got to be encouraging for people out there that are going through these bouncing. Life is not a straight line, it's a bunch of bounces. And a lot of times you're bouncing because you get hit. And but you don't have to stay down. Sometimes it can be the opportunity to switch gears. And a lot of times that resistance in your mind is simply because you have turned off the excitement switches in your brain because of obligations, and just told yourself, compartmentalize, no, I've got to work. And the fact, it can't always be interpreted as great freedom and excitement. Now I can do what I want to do. A lot of times you got to go through that resistance, and it's almost like tearing a page to get out of that mode. And it's interesting to hear you walk through those steps, and I can't wait to get into finding how you turn that entrepreneurial switched back on and turned it into reality.
If you enjoyed what you've heard and are dead serious about finding out for yourself exactly how this works in the real world, I've taken the most valuable business lessons I've learned over 40 years and put them into something for you to watch. Go to whiteelmwinning.com/webinar now in order to move up as fast as possible. I'm Larry Weidel, and I run the $1 Million Mastermind. Go, go, go.